Well, hello everyone and welcome. Welcome to the Live with Lesli show. And I gotta say, I'm really looking forward to this conversation today, especially as I am preparing mentally, especially for my own intermittent fast. And we will talk a lot about that topic today. So really looking forward to today's conversation. There's been so much buzz around intermittent fasting, and frankly, a little bit of controversy as well, which I find super interesting. So if you are finding yourself remotely curious about the benefits of intermittent fasting for either yourself, your family members, or your patient or client base, and perhaps you would like to discover some new tools to make that happen in your own practice, then you are definitely in the right place because today we are going to be talking. We have two special guests today. We have Cindy Carroll from the Institute for Functional Nutrition and Systems Biology, right?
Yeah.
Systems biology. And we also have Renee Fitton from L-Nutra. So I'm going to ask each of our guests to kind of kick off our conversation today by just kind of giving us an overview of what they're up to and maybe a little bit about how they got to the place that they are today. So Cindy, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lesli, for having me back. It's always fun to talk with you. So I have done a little switcheroo in my career where I'm not seeing as many patients. I have had a long time private practice, and I'm doing more patient education now. And I have a big course out there called fasting. Well, there's a fasting course in the larger course, but there's a pretty big course called Nutrition and Systems Biology, which I'll be talking about today. But I've really taken an interest in fasting for a variety of reasons, and I'll share that in a few minutes. But yeah, so doing more continuing education today versus a little bit less of direct patient consulting. And yeah, it's fun. I'm enjoying it.
And I just want to throw in that Cindy has like a line of initials after her name, like this long, including being actually, this is really rare in the dietitian world. So both a dietitian and an RN,
Yeah,
which is
right.
pretty cool. Not to mention a master's degree and the IFNA, right? The IFNA credential. What did I miss? Oh, and
I started off being a hygienist.
Okay, as a dental hygienist. So you got the whole body covered, right?
Which helped in my course. It did help in my course development, but wasn't the career for me long term.
Right. Okay. All right. Awesome. Looking forward to chatting with you more. And then we have Renee Fitton from L-Nutra. So yeah, give us kind of the overview of your background, Renee.
Absolutely. Well, I am a registered dietitian as well. I actually graduated from USC's Master's in Longevity and Nutrition. And this program was actually founded by Dr. Walter Longo, who is one of the leading longevity researchers. So have a very big focus in longevity, also very closely tied to fasting and fasting mimicking diets. Before that, I did some nutritional cooking. I also did concierge medicine, private practice. I also co-founded a nutrition tech startup, did that for a handful of years as well, which then led me to where I am today as the director of education at L-Nutra, the makers of Prolon, if anyone is familiar with the fasting mimicking diets, where I do lead a lot of education day to day to both physicians, consumers, patients, and more. So hopefully I'll be able to really dig into the science of fasting with you guys.
Yes. Oh, I'm so looking forward to that. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and jump in then, shall we, ladies? So I think what we'll do today is I'm going to hand it over to Cindy, and Cindy's going to kind of share an overview. She's got a few slides to share, and then we'll move into a conversation with Renee. So why don't you go ahead and kick things off, Cindy?
Excellent. Well, that was some of the words you said, they're a great introduction to this, because I do feel like this is one of those topics within the dietetic community that we have sort of this love-hate relationship with, right? There are a few of those topics out there, and I think fasting is one of them, and we have to be careful not to let our own biases get in the way of being objective about it and potentially be not able to have something that could be beneficial to the public because we might have our own reservations about it. So fasting, I think, is one of those topics. Yet, when you think about it in the public, it's definitely one of huge interest, and it seems like the research is also growing as well as the interest. And I think that our discipline as dietetics are totally meshed in line with being the experts with this. And so hopefully today, Renee and I can convince you to if you have reservations about it, this is absolutely one of the better talks to talk about it. So I'm going to help kind of reframe, I think, the position of fasting. And before I share my slides with you, I just want to mention my own learning curve, if you will, of kind of highlight a couple of points as to how I became so passionate about it, because I do think I've been curious about fasting really my whole career. I think in part because I think of it as part of physiology, and I made a course about anatomy and physiology. So to me, it sort of fits in with physiology. The problem was I was not a very good faster. So my body just was challenged by fasting, and many of you out there might be able to identify with that. And so some of that ties into what's called metabolic flexibility, which I talk about in my course, and Renee may or may not talk about that, but I wanted to find out more about why I responded the way I did. And so I just started doing more research. I came upon about 2016, 2017, I came upon Prolon, which was on the market. I think that's about when it came out. And I've been doing it for about 7 or 8 years myself. So 2 or 3 times a year. And after I did it a couple of times, I recommended it to my patients for the ones who I thought would benefit from it. And I'm happy to share some of that experience after I share some of my slides. And so at about that time when I was doing Prolong is also when I started making my systems biology course. And I taught that course actually live for the first time in 2017. And then the consensus, a couple of times I believe I did. And then the consensus was to make it a little larger and recorded. And that's what's out there now. It's been out for a couple of years. But I knew that I had to include fasting in that course because, as I said, it's really part of physiology. Because when you think about it, we look for fasting and non-fasting blood test results, right, for certain types of tests. And so we know that it's relevant. And I think if we kind of frame it that way and thinking of it more as part of physiology, it might be a little easier to appreciate why it's so important for us to know about it. So those 2 things for me was starting Prolong, doing it and seeing really incredible results from it, and then doing my course. But I have to say, another influential thing is with my husband, who has been, for personal reasons with some health things, and he's not in healthcare at all. He has like become this little medical guru or nutrition guru out there where if he's not doing something with the family or socially, he is like listening to a podcast or reading a book about a health topic or medical, or listening to a book. And he's pretty judicious about who he follows. They're pretty prominent researchers and scientists. But what he tells me is that no matter what the topic is, they always weave in fasting. And so, that just tells me it's out there, right? It's in the literature and the public is aware of it. So it's all the more reason for us as dietitians really to be on board with this. So with that said, I'm going to share my slides if that's okay. And I'm just going to run through here with you sort of where a little bit about my course and why I added fasting to it. So this is a separate course called Fasting and Systems Biology. It was accredited by the Academy for 2 CEUs, and it's part of my larger course. So I was happy this past spring I was able to get it accredited separately. And it's part of this larger course of the whole body, review of 8 systems, and that's 70 credits. And this past spring, I was able to get it also accredited for paired systems. So if you didn't want to take the full course at once, you can take pairs of systems, and that's 16 to 20 credits. And then the fasting, of course, is 2 credits. And the fasting, if you take the full course, is part of the bonus module. And what's important, I think, to think about, so when I made this course, and I knew when I was thinking about bonus modules, I had referenced fasting many times throughout the course. And so I realized I need to address this directly on and have a separate module for it, which is now its own little course. And so I want to just very briefly here address, because I think this might help you appreciate why it's so important with thinking about it with physiology. What is fasting? It's the voluntary abstinence of food and drink for a specified period of time. And in humans, it could be from 12 hours to 3 weeks to months. And believe it or not, there are some medical case studies of people fasting for up to a year. And then, of course, different types of religious fastings. In contrast to sort of the normal American way of eating, where we don't have really any restrictions on frequency or amounts. And this is not to be confused with starvation, which technically starvation is actually not voluntary. And so you might hear about somebody who is doing a starvation diet or something for an activist reason, and technically they're really fasting because they're intentionally doing it. Starvation is really more when, you know, you might be in a dire situation and food is withheld from you, or you might not have the funds to purchase food, or you have a medical condition where you can't consume food for a certain period of time. And then, of course, starvation could occur in organ damage and ultimately death even. And fasting carries its risks too, which we can talk about. Intermittent fasting is really more just an umbrella term for the time restrictions around it. And I talk about that quite a bit in the course. And that's where research is really starting to dive in more, looking at the different window periods. But one of the things I think might be helpful for you is when you think about fasting, is to also think about the word nourishment. And it might seem like, oh, how can you do that? They don't seem in line. But when you think of the word nourishment, actually part of the root of the word alludes to nutrients. So of course we think of nutrients, but actually nourishment can be anything that helps the body grow and attain health and really thrive. So we could all probably have our own little list of things that nourish us, but exercise, faith, prayer, sunshine, friendships, love, and then I would add, and yes, fasting. And nourishment leads to your body being in a homeostasis, which is really just a balance of your body. Your cells are balanced, which helps your organs stay healthy and your systems stay healthy. And all of your systems are communicating. So when you have an autoimmune condition or maybe insulin resistance or cancer, the homeostasis is disrupted. And so fasting is just one of those tools that helps us nourish the body to get back to a more balanced state. And I use this little image here quite a bit when I talk about dietitians and to help showcase the knowledge that we have. When we think about how food is absorbed, as I call it, this fork to cell nutrient travel, where food and nutrients are absorbed at the cellular level. That's the goal, right, for nutrients, is to get to the cell to produce ATP to provide energy. And that's essentially what nutritional biochemistry is. But all that action in between is what anatomy and physiology is, because nutrients don't get to the cell without knowledge about the organs and without knowledge about anatomy and physiology. And the ultimate destination, of course, is to the cell. But if we only know part of this equation, if we only know our biochemistry, or we only know a little bit of the anatomy and physiology, then we really are shortchanging our clients. And this is true with fasting too. So we kind of focus, of course, always on thinking about the absorption of nutrients, but understanding what happens to the body and the cells and the organs when we do the opposite with fasting is just so important for us to appreciate. And part of that process of anatomy and physiology is understanding this concept of what I call structure determines function. And this little concept and this little hammer follows me around, if you're taking my course through each of the systems. And I chose the hammer just because it's a nice visual to demonstrate how it's a basic engineering concept. So how something's designed determines its purpose or role. So the flat end of the hammer helps to hammer the nail, and the fork end pulls the nail up. Probably think of a few other roles for hammers, but that's the essence of the concept structure determines function. And this is true anywhere in the body, whether you're in the gut mucosa, or you're in the red blood cell, or you're talking about the blood-brain barrier. The more we appreciate how it's designed, we can appreciate what its role is. And it's just, the students who have taken my course tell me it has really helped change their mindset as to how they troubleshoot really tough issues with their patients. And so this is the basic setup of the course. And when you're thinking about fasting, every system here is relevant really. And I talk about structure and function in each of them. That gives us the foundation to really better assess biomarkers in labs, and then diet and supplements. And so in the fasting course itself, these are just a few of the things that we touch upon. But I guess my big impression for you today is just to realize that fasting affects every organ and every system in the body. And I hope that you can reframe it for people who might be. I know some people are all in and appreciate it, but there are others who are a little more skeptical about it. And I can understand that, because I knew myself, especially if you don't respond well to fasting. Everyone has sort of a different response. His body is different. So reframing it and thinking of it more as nourishment. And we talk about autophagy and mTOR, which are really important nutrient sensing pathways that fasting has a part of, or when we're eating also has a part of. So understanding those pathways are important. Understanding the effects of fasting on each body system, we get into that. And then also the relationship with fasting and our circadian. So many important elements to it. And then prolonged fasting mimicking diet, which is what Renee is going to be sharing some great information about. And this is just for you to save this slide for the discounts here if you're interested in the course, the fasting course, or the full course, or the paired systems. And I'm always available to talk, to chat if you have questions, or if you lose the slide and you need the discount code. I'm happy to talk with anybody. So, and I'm happy to share my experiences when we get into this with Prolon, because I've been doing it for a while now, and I see really great benefits. Are we back? I'm back.
We're back.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about your experience, especially given the fact that you said you're not a good faster. I think that's how you put it.
Yes.
So A, what does that mean? And what does that look like? And
Yeah.
B, what did you do about it to help get yourself through?
Well, for me, it's feeling like my blood sugar is going too low. So I sort of figured out, I think it's my transitioning into ketosis is shaky for me. So, and I have patients who it's not an issue at all. You know, they don't even really notice that they are. But so, and I've always been like that. Like I have never really could go a day. Part of my concern, actually, this might sound crazy, but I would think like, what if I was stuck in a jungle or something somewhere? And I couldn't have access to food, I would be in trouble. I mean, I feel like I'd probably pass out. And so I wanted to understand that more about my body, why it was like that. And so I've made some changes in my macronutrients and fat, carbs, and that's helped a lot. So that a 12-hour fast, 14-hour fast is really, no big deal now for me. But still Prolong, I have to think about it. I do little things like, but it's very true, like what we were talking about before. It really improves your focus. So as long as I don't exercise, I do very well on it. I can't exercise. I know some people that can be a little bit more active, but I can't. It does improve my thinking though. So I'm able to focus. I just had to kind of nuance the timing of the meals. So sometimes I would just have them earlier. I wouldn't wait until, noontime to have the soup. I might have it a little earlier. You'd be surprised how much, just because that's what the magic of it is, the balance of the macronutrients. You get just enough to kind of give you the little boost that you need. And it's not for me, it's not as much mentally, although I can't wait to have chocolate and when I'm done. but it's more just my blood sugar. And once I was able to nuance the timing, and they do give you the option to have like a little extra, like celery stick or a slice of apple or something, right, Renee?
Mhm.
If,
Yeah, there are some little
yeah.
tricks.
They're
up
little
front.
Yeah, and
tricks.
I'd love to know, well, first of all, for our audience, we have not yet talked about what Prolon is,
Yeah.
Right.
right? So
Mhm.
my guess is that people are like, what do you
What
mean?
is she
What is this
talking about?
Prolon thing, right?
What do you mean chocolate? And what do you mean?
Yeah,
All
like I
these
get to eat a
macros?
slice of celery, huh? Okay,
But that's what,
so
for me, I would just feel like I'd bottom out for fasting. So that why I'm a good faster.
okay. And so for our audience, we're going to talk about what Prolon is and the actual, like the science behind it. So hang tight. We're going to get you there. But before we go, I do want to ask Cindy, did you ever test your blood sugar when you were having these dips?
I didn't. Well, I have
Okay.
tested my blood sugar before, but I didn't use a continuous glucose
Or
monitor.
even a finger stick, just
Yeah,
to kind of verify. Because
yeah.
interestingly, I can speak for myself on this. Sometimes, like I usually have a CGM on. I took it
Yeah.
off. I don't have it on today, but what I've noticed is sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. Oh, I'm, just like dying, right? And I'll look and I'll go, oh, my blood sugar's not that low, right? And
Yeah.
then other times it'll dip and I don't really,
Don't
I'm
notice
not
them.
symptomatic.
Huh,
So
interesting.
yeah,
I
so
actually
I
feel
guess
like
the
I
reason
might.
I'm asking is your blood sugar really, really
Yeah.
low?
It's a good point. I've talked about this with Renee that I would like to go on a glucose monitor when I do it
Mhm.
next. I actually feel like I could faint. So I do think
Mm,
it's probably low, but it is
yeah,
an important point. And I think she's going to have some great information to
yeah.
share about that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll dig
All
in. We'll
right.
dig into
So
all of that stuff.
great. So
Tell us
let's
what it is.
transition. Let's have a conversation now, a little bit deeper with with both of you. Specifically, we'll dig in with Renee. Can you give us an overview for our audience? What the heck is Prolon? For those that don't
Yes.
know, we
Yes.
probably should have done this in reverse order now that I think about it. So bear with us if you're like, wait, did I miss something here? And what is the relationship with L-Nutra? Because if
Mhm.
you're like most people, or I don't know, maybe it's just me, I always think of, okay, Renee works for Prolon, but she
Yeah.
actually, yeah. So give us the lowdown there.
Well, I'll just say a little bit about L-Nutra. Yes, L-Nutra is our parent company. L-Nutra actually has a couple of different verticals that all focus on leveraging nutrition science and nutrition technology to support longevity. So that is our mission. And we've done that with a number of different kind of pillars. One is Prolon, of course. It's more of our direct-to-consumer avenue that has created a number of products, one being our 5-day fasting mimicking diet. That's what people most know us for. But we also do a lot of other fasting support products, as well as longevity support products. So even a new protein powder that has a really unique amino acid composition. So that is the world of Prolon. And then we also just recently started L-Nutra Health, which is our medical division that is doing some pretty incredible things. We have decades of science behind fasting and fasting mimicking, specifically fasting mimicking, and now are leveraging that science to create programs that are helping people reverse or go into remission with type 2 diabetes. We have some incredible science in autoimmunity that are going to start really creating new programs there. And it's just really going to continue with, over 30 plus clinical trials supporting that. So that is the quick overview of L-Nutra, Prolon, and all that mix match.
Awesome. So, I mean, basically, one thing I just want to mention is just FYI for everybody, you can order product direct through the company, L-Nutra, and I know Renee's going to share more about that should you be interested. And some of their products are available on Full Script, just FYI. I don't think all of them, but some of them.
Absolutely.
So available in a couple different sources. So let's have a conversation. Why do you think fasting, why did it get popular? Why is there so much buzz around fasting? And have you noticed an increase lately?
Yes. I
'Cause
mean,
I don't know if it's just me, but I'm just like, I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it all over the place lately.
I certainly feel that way. I feel like it's
Yeah.
really like expanded quite a bit, but I think that boom of new discussions around fasting has actually, maybe made us more fearful that it's a bit of a fad. And I really want to challenge that because fasting has been around. It's been a part of human evolution, for history, for across species, and across cultures and time. I mean, this really has been a part of human evolution. And so from the very beginning of time, we actually had to evolve and learn to thrive during periods of fasting. And it is just maybe now today that the research has properly caught up with us, and that people are really starting to catch on to what the science is saying and leveraging this in our protocols and in the way that we eat. So, I absolutely believe that it has gotten especially popular now. And, but I just want to remind everybody that it isn't necessarily a fad, and it is heavily based on, a whole evolution of time behind us.
Yeah, I mean, we know different religions have fasting as part of what they do. So yeah, I think that is really an important point, that it is not it's not a fleeting fancy, right?
Yeah.
It's
And
been around. What are the different kinds of fasting, or like the different types?
I love this question because I think that a lot of people, when they hear fasting, they just think, oh, okay, 16-8, or, fasting for 16 hours, you eat for 8. That's what fasting is. It's intermittent fasting, and you do it pretty much every day. But there is so much more to it than that. At Prolon and L-Nutra, we actually divide them into fasts under 2 days. That can include circadian fasts or 12-hour fasts. I think sometimes, some people, 12-hour fasting is just natural to them. That's how they normally eat. That is actually still a fast because you are not eating for 12 hours. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people who don't ever fast for that long. And the longest they're really ever going is about 8 hours. But even that, we consider about 12 hours to be the starting point to really start getting into that fast, because you start transitioning into that ketosis. And then we go all the way up to several days. So why do we break the line at the 2-day mark? I think is an important distinction. Why do we say over on the under 2 days, this is more of our intermittent fasting, and over 2 days is what we call prolonged? And the big differentiator here is that once you fast for over about 2 days, we start triggering something called autophagy. That is a deep cellular cleanup. I sometimes refer to it as a vacuum cleaner for our cells, an internal doctor for our cells. Essentially, it is the cleanup crew that is taking out misfolded proteins, cellular components that are not working as well anymore, and clearing those out, making room for new, healthier cell components. And, if we are only really tapping into this at scale, at a high volume, when we fast for over about 2 days, then a lot of people are not really tapping into this at all, which is pretty, I think, quite shocking. So I definitely wanted to make the distinction between the longer fasts of over 2 days, where that's where you start tapping into that deep cellular cleanup. And then also mention, yes, there is still absolutely a place for these shorter intermittent fasts. These are where you start shifting into ketosis. You get a little bit of metabolic flexibility. There is certainly metabolic benefit there, but you don't get all of that deep cellular cleanup that you might get with these longer, more than 2-day fasts.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Now that kind of leads us down the path of what we call fasting mimicking diets, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the Prolon product line comes into play. So can you kind of give us an overview of what that is? Fasting mimicking diets.
Absolutely. So I think it's nice to start with a little bit of a story and history as to why the heck fasting mimicking diets even came to be. And I think for most people who think about fasting, you think about water only fasting, and it's pretty understandable for most people, especially when you try and tell them to do it for more than 2 days, for people to scoff at that and think there is no way that you're going to convince me to fast with just water for even more than 24 hours, because it's uncomfortable. But not only is water fasting uncomfortable, it also has some safety concerns when we do that for a long period of time. And there's risk for muscle loss and muscle wasting if done for too long as well. So all of these things raise some alarm bells, and especially I think too. We got a bunch of dietitians on the panel here. We really are concerned about these things. And if you go back in time to when Dr. Walter Longo was doing his research in calorie restriction and fasting, he had those same alarm bells go off. And he thought, what the heck can we do to get these incredible benefits of water-only fasting, but still give people nutrition, still give them fuel? And that will make it easier, safer, and hopefully protect muscle, which we did find that it did do. And so that is really the magic of fasting mimicking diets, is how can we give food, but let our cells believe that they are in a fasted state? And how can we let our body get to this 2+ day fast, get into this deep cellular cleanup, but still eat? And so that's where decades of science went into figuring out what the heck do our cells see as fasting versus what maybe our eyes and brain might perceive as what is a fast.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys, sounds like your company, L-Nutra, has been researching this for, I believe it's decades, right?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
it 3 decades?
It's about over 25 years now.
Okay.
So we have
And you've cracked the code on this formula that allows us to eat while tricking our body into believing it's actually fasting. So, we can eat, but we still get the benefits of fasting, essentially, right?
absolutely. And that's really where the magic happens. And, I will note that this is, as you mentioned, decades of science. There is about over $48 million in, R&D and funding, of which $36 million comes from NIH and EU funding,
Okay.
because of really the value that they see in trying to get this benefit of fasting only with food. We have now over 100 patents internationally, and we've worked with some pretty incredible research partners, 18+ research institutions, including UCLA, Harvard, some of the biggest names out there conducting research with Prolon and L-Nutra.
Okay. So can you share a little bit of that science with us?
Absolutely. So I think, I mentioned what do our cells perceive as fasting versus what our eyes or maybe the dictionary definition of fasting is. And I think this is where we really need to draw the line. The dictionary definition is that you just don't eat, but our cells don't read that same dictionary. They actually have a slightly different definition of what is deemed fasting. And specifically, there are alarm bells on our cells, and they are called what we call nutrient sensing pathways. They are cellular pathways that recognize the presence of food and specifically specific nutrients in specific amounts. And so what the research went into figuring out is, what are those amounts and what are those nutrients that set off the alarm? What sets off these nutrient sensing systems? And we found that there were 3 major nutrient sensing pathways: IGF-1, mTOR, and PKA, and that these were mostly stimulated, especially by simple sugars and carbohydrates and proteins, and in specific amounts. And so then we went into figuring out, okay, how can we pair foods to live below these sensors? How much can we give before they are triggered? And that is what we figured out. We just live right below those sensors and just give enough to give you nutrition and give you satiety, but not too much to set them off and kick you out of a fast.
Okay. So it's not like you can just eat whatever you want. Right?
No.
And it's not like you can just say, okay, eat X number of calories, or like my takeaway based on what I'm learning here is that you really cannot replicate it with your own food in your own kitchen,
It
right?
would be really hard. I have
Okay.
this, somebody gave me this beautiful analogy that I'm going to be repurposing here, which is that, you know, it would be like saying that you go out and buy a lithium battery and then saying that you're going to try and make a Tesla. It's going to be really hard. Yeah, there's going to be a world where you can do that, but it would be incredibly difficult because there's just so many components in science that go into that it'd be really hard to do. So that's, you know, we did the work for everybody. We did the work to figure out how the heck these things pair together and can be done. And then we tested that work and we made sure that it was actually doing what we wanted it to do. We tested, it is autophagy being triggered. Yes, in fact, it is. We clinically showed that. Is it giving those same metabolic and deep cellular benefits that we see with water-only fasting? Yes, it does. And sometimes, you know, even better results, in fact. So we'll go into that.
I'd like to add to that, if there wasn't the standardization of Prolon, right, with the exact amounts, this sounds obvious, but you wouldn't have the research to support it. So I know there's a lot of not a lot, but some who are trying to replicate it on their own, just the ratio of the macronutrients, but all that nutrient sensing is so important that can throw it off in the quantities. So I think the standardization doesn't get the credit, perhaps, because without it, you wouldn't have all these clinical trials with the results to show all the effects.
Yeah, exactly.
Really interesting. Okay, so are there specific data that you'd like to share, Renee?
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you asked. I'm actually going to share my screen because I do believe that when it comes to research, it's nice to see the slides and to see the graphs. So can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, fantastic. So to kick us off, I mean, we hear, I think, with fasting most often longevity. They are very closely tied. And now we can actually measure how our protocols are impacting longevity through various biological age measurements. And so we actually tested this with Prolon, and we used Dr. Morgan Levine's gold standard in biological age testing to assess before and after Prolon. And our protocol, just for anybody who's unfamiliar, is generally about 3 cycles. That is 5 days of the fasting mimicking program and 25 days off, done 3 months in a row. Okay. And so what we see is that with just those 3 cycles, we see a 2.5-year biological age score reversal. That's 15 days of a fast over 3 months, and you're seeing a 2.5-year biological age reversal. That is incredible and truly, I mean, pretty unheard of. And then we also simulated this data, comparing it to NHANES. We compared it to see what happens if we do this for 20 years. What if we do these 3 cycles a year for 20 years? And we see that this continues. And we see an 11-year biological age score reversal with this protocol. So really impactful on longevity. And we also did, using that simulation data, we were able to see how would this impact, you know, your risk? How would this impact the risk of various conditions associated with all of these metabolic changes that are occurring when we are in a fast? And it turns out that even in healthy individuals, we saw anywhere from 6 to 25% risk reduction across cancer, diabetes, cerebrovascular, heart, all cause. And then if you did have a risk factor or some, you know, one of the measurements out of a healthy baseline or healthy range, then we see these impacts even improve further from 10 to 32% risk reduction with this. So it's pretty impactful what even just a handful of days a year can do to your longevity and your risk. So then I think a lot of the reasons why people initially think to finally dive into fasting inevitably is going to be weight loss. So I would be remiss not to mention it. Although, you know, at Prolon, we are big believers that fasting is there for those deep cellular cleanup benefits and the longevity benefits. We are absolutely supportive of the people who are diving in to support with weight loss. And the reason why we believe that this is one of the best ways to tackle that is because we've been able to show that not only do we see some significant weight loss in a relatively short period of time, but that weight loss is fat focused. We see, if you look at that graph on the very far right, that the lean body mass percent is actually going up. And that's because the muscle is being protected. It's not changing while your fat is going down. And that is pretty incredible in today's world where most diets are causing this pretty significant muscle wasting, especially when we look at today's significant usage of GLP-1s and semaglutides, et cetera. So the fat-focused weight loss is really, I think, a big driver and maybe the reason why a patient might start here. We also see that it is tapping specifically into visceral fat. We see it taps into also specifically trunk fat. And then we've also shown it tapping into hepatic fat. And in individuals with very high hepatic fat fractions, we see almost 50% reduction with just those. Actually, in this example, it was a 4-cycle trial, but pretty incredible results across not just, you know, this subcutaneous fat, but those really important fat that we're trying to reduce. So I'll also just quickly touch on a study that we did just recently published in Nature, comparing the 5-day fasting mimicking diet over 4 months, once a month for 4 months, to the Mediterranean diet done every single day for 120 days. So same period of time, but the fasting mimicking diet only had to be done for 5 days a month, whereas the Mediterranean diet had to be done every single day. And what we saw is in measures of endothelial function and heart health measures that were done, they had an equivalent impact. So that's fantastic. We love the Mediterranean diet. It does beautiful things. But what we did also see is that the fasting mimicking diet protected muscle, whereas the Mediterranean diet saw a relatively significant muscle loss. So it is really incredible to see when we look at the way that we lose weight with a fasting mimicking diet compared to pretty much any other diet, especially when we do caloric deficit diets, what we see to muscle. And I can go into the science as to why we think that is, but essentially because we're giving nutrition, but our body is reacting to have some of these protective mechanisms to our muscles simultaneously because it believes it's in a fast. There is this very protective effect of a fast with food, which really can only happen when you fast with food. I'll also just quickly note, of course, there's plenty of metabolic improvements that can happen when we fast, and specifically with fasting mimicking diets, which we've shown. We see some improvements in blood pressure, IGF-1, which we oftentimes use as a measure of healthy aging. We also see metrics across the board. You know, we see cholesterol in individuals where they veer further away from a healthy baseline, where we pulled these individuals out and showed some impressive results here as well with you know, even CRP, blood pressure, fasting glucose, etc. So I'm actually just going to jump ahead to our dermatology study. I mean, it's not just internally, it's externally too. When we go and we work at this root cause approach and we work at the cellular level, it is expected too that we are going to see changes even externally, and we do. So we studied this, we did a dermatology study showing improvements in skin texture, skin hydration, fine lines, all improved with even just the first 5-day cycle. So even just after 1 cycle, we see improvements. And it's really fun to see people take before and after pictures of their face. It's drastic, the change that you see with just even 5 days. So the last one that I want to note is the behavioral impact. And I think especially as dietitians, this one is near and dear to our heart. Now, I think fasting, generally has a negative connotation in terms of the relationship with food. But in fact, what we see when done over these short periods of time, again, our recommendation is doing these prolonged 5-day fasts only about 3 times a year, 3 to 4 times a year. What we see is that people are more motivated to adopt a healthy lifestyle after they complete even just their first 4 days. They feel like they have more control over their health. They're more mindful of what they eat. They have less food cravings. All of these things, their relationship with food is changed with fasting. So that is those are some of the most important things that I think are worth noting in terms of what the research has shown specifically with fasting mimicking.
Crazy.
Systems biology at work.
That's right. So who is this for? Fast mimicking diets? Who is this for? Like, someone in private practice, how would we kind of triage our clients appropriately? And equally as important, who is it not for? Are there any contraindications?
Absolutely. So I'll just quickly start by saying, when we look at Prolon more generally, we say that this is for individuals who are looking for healthy aging, people who are looking for weight loss, but a healthy weight loss, and also people looking for some slight metabolic improvements. Now, we recently just came out with our L-Nutra Health, and this is based off of some additional science that we have. I mentioned briefly in the beginning that we have research that has also been done across disease states. So we have research in oncology. We have dozens of trials, at least a dozen trials in cancer research. We also have trials in autoimmune conditions, including MS, IBD, etc. We also have trials that are even in Alzheimer's, but where we're starting and kind of exploring first with programs is our cardiometabolic research. We recently showed that a 5-day program done over 6 months, so 5 days a month for 6 months in a row, was able to reduce medications in patients with type 2 diabetes in 67% of patients, while also dropping their A1C by 1.4%. So this is incredible. Not only are they dropping their A1C, but they are also coming off of medication simultaneously. It's the power of fasting. And that is not only because of weight loss, but which was quite significant at about an average of 22 pounds, but also because of improvements in HOMA-IR, insulin resistance, improvements in at the cellular level. We did a preclinical trial in mice showing even regeneration of beta cells. Again, that is preclinical, of course, so we can only go so far as to assume what that will do in humans. But because we are working at this root cause, we do see some pretty incredible results there. So I bring all of that up to say that now we also recommend fasting mimicking diets in individuals with type 2 diabetes and metabolic health needs, whether that be trying to reduce cholesterol, trying to reduce blood pressure, etc. Those would all be really great candidates for the L-Nutra Health programs as well. So it really is for pretty much anybody, but I will caveat by saying there's a handful of people that we wouldn't recommend this for.
Okay.
And those are individuals who are pregnant or breastfeeding, individuals under the age of 18, as those are all growth phases of life, of course. We also do not recommend it for people who have nut allergies. There's quite a bit of nuts in the program. We also have sesames and oats that could be allergens. Individuals with a history of eating disorders, we would not recommend beginning this protocol. And that is really it. Of course, individuals who have any sort of end stage health conditions, we would not recommend this for. You want to be generally healthy. And then individuals over the age of 65, we just urge that they do this with the care of a practitioner and a healthcare provider overseeing them.
Okay. So let's talk about how we can get it.
Yes.
I alluded to that a little bit a short while ago, indicating that some of the products are available on full script, but I think the majority of, well, all the products are available online, right?
Yes. And
So
you need to
at your
incorporate.
website. Okay.
Yeah, I want to bring this up because we do have them online at prolonlife.com. Anybody can go purchase product there. But as practitioners, I would urge you to register as Prolon professionals. You can access special pricing. You also get access to special one-on-one education with our medical education team. You also get access to free education and marketing materials to help get this out to your patients. We have wonderful programs to help you get this to your patients for them at a lower cost and also at a profit for you. And so all of that is really well designed. You can go ahead and scan the QR code that I'm sharing on the screen. You can also go to prolonprofessional.com, and that will get you lots of really incredible access to our products at great prices and lots of support.
Okay. And then just one more quick thing before we wrap up. When you put it, or if you order it for yourself or one of your own patients or clients, essentially you get like a 5-day kit,
And
right?
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I realized I feel like I got way too far without saying what the heck is in this
Yeah.
5-day program. We keep saying 5-day program, 5-day program, but what is in it? So it is a box that comes with individual days boxes within it. And within each box, you get a breakfast bar, you get soups for lunch and for dinner, you get snacks like crackers and olives, and you even get a little chocolate crisp at the end of the day. It comes with supplements. It also comes with teas and beverages. So truly everything that you need to succeed is in there. It's very clearly outlined. We give a little menu to kind of help you decide how we would recommend organizing it through the day. But it really is however you wish to organize it is how.
Great. All right. All right. Well, gosh, thank you so much for joining me, both Cindy and Renee. Really enjoyed this conversation. I'm looking forward to jumping in and getting started. I've got my kit sitting on the counter and looking forward to, really getting all those incredible metabolic benefits, right?
I always
So,
feel better when I'm done,
yeah,
Leslie.
okay.
Always.
I love that. So that definitely is the carrot, right? Just feeling more clear and just better. So, all right, ladies, thank you so very much for your time today. And
Thank
to
you.
our audience, I think you got we'll also post that code for prolonprofessionals.com, and we will repost Cindy's code for her course. All right.
Okay,
So you'll
awesome.
have all the information you need right at your fingertips to take action. All right, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, an awesome weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
Yes.